They lived on the same hills as most of the survivors I had talked to. They had taken part in the carnage of the marshes of Nyamwizwa, where the fugitives had gone to hide, burying themselves up to the neck in slime beneath the vegetation. They were all farmers, except for one civil servant and one teacher, and only three belonged to any parliamentary or Interahamwe organization. Aside from Ellie, they had never worn a police or army uniform. None of them had ever quarreled with his Tutsi neighbors over land, crops, damage, or women. Moreover, Innocent knew them all well, and they knew him. A pupil, and then a teacher at a local school, a public scribe in his spare time, the life and the soul of several associations, a man of boundless dedication, a beloved and amusing frequenter of numerous cabarets. Innocent was well liked in those hills, in particular in Kabungo, where his family farm is located. He was an indispensable intermediary, the ideal collaborator, and a formidable translator whenever necessary. He had this to say about the gang. I knew them from way back. I had taught some of them, like Adelbert, Pancras, Pio. The others I used to run into along the way and share a drink with at the cabaret. Adelbert was very intelligent and very bold, sly and mean in an ordinary way. Pancras was tough and hard to read. He's been in Adelbert's shadow since they were little kids. Pio was really quite nice. Alphonse was the wiliest at business, but obliging enough with a bottle in front of him. Fulgence thought himself as a very good-looking boy. He was even more dapper than many Tutsis, and very fond of praying. Leopold, he never got himself noticed for anything but his height, and the fact that what he did later with his machete was dumbfounding. Ignis was a codger and a dodger, plus he'd suddenly go nasty with Tutsis. He always hated him, and said so long, loud, and often to sway his colleagues or make them laugh. But he never laughed. He lived on the outs with everyone, even his family. In the end, those boys were no different from the others in character, but they went around together. You saw that they shared alike with field work and drink at the cabaret. During the genocide, I know that the gang went out cutting from the first day to the last, and at Adelbert's prodding, perhaps, or under the bad influence of Ignis, they became relentless. Taste and distaste. Ignis. At the beginning, we were too fired up to think. Later on, we were too used to it. In our condition, it meant nothing to us to think we were busy cutting our neighbors down to the last one. It becomes a goes without saying. They had already stopped being good neighbors of long standing, the ones who handed around the Iragua can at the cabaret, since they wouldn't be there any more. They had become people to throw away, so to speak. They no longer were what they had been, and neither were we. They did not bother us, and the past did not bother us, because nothing bothered us. Ellie. We had to put off our good manners at the edge of the muck until we heard the whistle to quit working. Kindness, too, was forbidden in the marshes. The marshes left no room for exceptions. To forget doubt, we had meanness and ruthlessness in killing. A job to do and do well, that's all. Some changed color from hunting. Their limbs were muddy, and their clothes were splattered. Even their faces were not black in the same way. They became grayish from everything they had done. A little layer of stink covered us, but we didn't care. Pio. We no longer saw a human being when we turned up a Tutsi in the swamps. I mean a person like us, sharing similar thoughts and feelings. The hunt was savage. The hunters were savage. The prey was savage. Savagery took over the mind. Not only had we become criminals, we had become a ferocious species in a barbarous world. This truth is not believable to someone who has not lived it in his muscles. Our daily life was unnatural and bloody, and that suited us. For my part, I offer you an explanation. It is as if I had let another individual take on my own living appearance and the habits of my heart, without a single pain in my soul. This killer was indeed me, as to the offense he committed and the blood he shed, but he is a stranger to me in his ferocity. I admit and recognize my obedience at that time, my victims, my fault, but I fail to recognize the wickedness of the person who raced through the marshes on my legs, carrying my machete. That wickedness seems to belong to another self with a heavy heart. The most serious changes in my body were my invisible parts, such as the soul or the feelings that go with it. Therefore I alone do not recognize myself in that man. But perhaps someone outside this situation, like you, cannot have an inkling of that strangeness of mind. Pancreas. Some began the hunts with nerve, and finished them with nerve, while others never showed nerve, and killed from obligation. For others, in time, nerve replaced fear. Many displayed nerve while they were working, and fear as soon as the killing stopped. They simply fired themselves up during the melee. Some avoided the corpses. Others did not give a spit. The sight of those corpses spreading through the marshes, it could put courage into you or weigh on you and slow you down. But most often it hardened you. Killing is very discouraging if you yourself must decide to do it, even to an animal. But if you must obey the orders of the authorities, if you have been properly prepared, if you feel yourself pushed and pulled, if you see that the killing will be total and without disastrous consequences for yourself, you feel soothed and reassured. You go off to it with no more worry. Jean-Baptiste. The more we killed, the more greediness urged us on. Greediness, if left unpunished, it never lets you go. You could see it in our eyes, bugged out by these killings. It was even dangersome. There were those who came back in blood-stained shirts, brandishing their machetes, shrieking like madmen, saying they wanted to grab everything. We had to calm them with drinks and soothing words, because they could turn ugly for those around them. Alphonse. Man can get used to killing if he kills on and on. He can even become a beast without noticing it. Some threatened one another when they had no more Tutsis under the machete. In their faces you could see the need to kill. But for others, on the contrary, killing a person drove a share of fear into their hearts. They did not feel it at first, but later it tormented them. They felt frightened or sickened. Some felt cowardly for not killing enough. Some felt cowardly for being forced to kill, so some drank overmuch to stop thinking about their cowardice. Later on they got used to the drink, or the cowardice. Me, I was not scared of death. In a way, I forgot I was killing live people. I no longer thought about either life or death, but the blood struck terror in me. It stank and dripped. At night I'd tell myself, after all, I am a man full of blood. All this spurting blood will bring catastrophe, a curse. Death did not alarm me, but that overflow of blood, yes, a lot. Jean. A boy with enough strength in his arms to hold the machete firmly. If his brother or his father brought him along in the group, he imitated and grew used to killing. Killing became an ordinary activity since our elders and everyone did it. Or a young boy might even prove more at ease with it than an experienced older, because the death touched him from further away. Given the novelty of the circumstances and his young age, death seemed less important to him. He saw it as belonging to an older generation. He shrugged off its perils and considered it a distraction. Joseph Désiré. It became a madness that went on all by itself. You raced ahead, or you got out of the way to escape being run over, but you followed the crowd. The one who rushed off machete in hand, he listened to nothing any more. He forgot everything, first of all his level of intelligence. Doing the same thing every day meant we didn't have to think about what we were doing. We went out and came back without having a single thought. We hunted because it was the order of the day, until the day was over. Our arms ruled our heads. In any case, our heads no longer had their say.